Ok, muy buenas tardes a todos los amigos periodistas que atendieron nuestra...
Good afternoon to all colleague journalists who attended this invitation for this press briefing that we will concentrate on the question of the embassy of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in Washington, the capital of this country, District of Columbia, D.C. For that, we have a guest, Mr. Very from Code Pink, who also call themselves as protectors of the embassy and who are inside the embassy with our authorization, and will explain what's going on and why they're doing this. I will read a short declaration on this subject, and then I'll give the floor to Mr. Berry to answer some questions according to the same rules as usual. Those who ask in English, I will reply in English. Those who ask in Spanish, I will reply in Spanish. But in this declaration, which I have in English and Spanish, this time I'll read it in English because I think the U.S. public opinion and the international public opinion is the one that is the least informed about this situation. In Venezuela, it's very clear. We're very clear about what's going on. But outside, it's unclear. And I'll try to explain it. I will provide the official explanation of the Venezuelan government, and he will provide Mr. Berry of the pacifists and the fighters for peace who are inside the embassy. I'll read this and then give the floor to Mr. Berry.
A very serious incident occurred at the embassy of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in Washington, D.C. U.S. authorities tried to forcibly evict a group of individuals who were peacefully staying in the facilities with the full authorization of our government in order to prevent the illegal assault of the premise by violent groups, supporters of the coup d'etat that took place last April the 30th in Venezuela. The objective of the embassy protectors was not to remain as permanent tenants of the diplomatic headquarters, as had been falsely argued for their illegal and forced evacuation. Their goal was to avoid the forceful takeover of the embassy, just as it took place in the two diplomatic premises, namely the headquarters of the former military attaché offices in Washington and the headquarters of the former consulate in New York, both of which were taken over by violent groups with the complicity of the U.S. authorities. Theirs was a preventive action with two additional purposes. Firstly, to inform the public opinion about the abuses committed against the diplomatic headquarters of our republic, and second, to promote respect for international law by the two countries through an agreement that would allow for the peaceful solution of this situation. This type of situation should be resolved by appointing third states with protecting powers in order to maintain the integrity of the diplomatic headquarters. Article 45 of the Vienna Convention states that even in cases of severance of diplomatic relations, the receiving state shall be obliged to respect and protect the premises of the mission. This is only possible through respect for the principle of immunity. For otherwise, if a government uses its territory, paid and protected agents to occupy and violate the diplomatic offices of other governments, the provisions of the convention would be shattered, and all diplomatic offices in the world would be in danger. So our position is simply that we demand and stand for respect of international law and Vienna Convention, which have been violated already in our premises here in the consulate in New York and in the military attaché office in Washington. And they are trying again violently to take over our premises in Washington. And this is a massive violation, not just of Venezuelan rights, but of the rights of all diplomats around the world to work with respect to their physical and moral, I would say also, integrity, in the sense that there is no way that the government of the United States of America can choose who is the right and lawful authority of Venezuela. They can recognize whoever they want, but they cannot designate who is the rightful government in Venezuela, as they are trying to do by changing the facilities and premises of our diplomatic headquarters here to a coup d'etat group. I'm going just to say here, because I think more important than my opinion today is their point of view, so I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Barry. Thank you.
Well, as the Honorable Representative of Venezuela just said, our concerns are very easy to understand. One is the Charter of the United Nations is being violated every single day that the government of the United States tries to recognize someone else to take control on the embassy. We recognize the Vienna Treaty of 1961 that says that the country, even if it's having a problem with the country of that's hosting it, the property that this embassy is sovereign to the country of Venezuela. We went into the embassy of Venezuela recognizing that there could possibly be a war over an embassy. If the embassy in Washington, D.C. is taken, what says that the embassy in Venezuela can't be, the American embassy in Venezuela can't be taken, which sets a pretext for war. The administration in the United States is violating not only UN Charter, but I'm going to be very clear. If you come to the embassy of Venezuela in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., you will see that the United States, our local police departments in Washington, D.C., of which I am a resident, are violating our local laws. They're allowing gangs to beat on us, throw things at us, attack us, rip our hair out of our head. They've allowed gangs to take sledgehammers to the doors of the sovereign protected state building of Venezuela. We've had State Department police constantly there for weeks on end, supposedly to protect the building. Windows have been broken. People have been crawling through spaces to try and get inside. We had our space in front that we had for a month where we did daily protests. When these radical groups of violent Venezuelans, so-called Venezuelans, I don't believe they're all Venezuelan. We know that there are many Cubans in there, Cuban Americans and Nicaraguan Americans, who are extremely violent. I myself was beaten, and in the course of being beaten while trying to set up the very same tents that they had multiples of, I was arrested, spent 56 hours in jail for doing the exact same behavior, only being attacked by it. We, the Embassy Protectors Cooperative, have never laid one hand on any of the violent reactionary Venezuelans, so-called Venezuelans, are in front of these buildings. We have been attacked. People have been sleeping inside the embassy, of which I was sleeping in the embassy for a while. They're sleeping in one single room out of fear. They use sound devices. I am 62 years old. I've had sirens put to my head for 10 minutes, more, for hours, at decibels of 111 decibels. That can make me deaf in years to come. But I am there because I strongly believe in the rights of Venezuela. I also strongly believe in the rights of Americans to use our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech. And I also, as an activist, as a pacifist, for many, many decades now, I realize the pretext of war is right there. We have a warmonger in the White House named John Bolton. Now I'm separating him from our president, who seems to take on actions that are totally illegal all the time. But this particular action is a precept for war. Venezuela has the right to have its own building. There are rules that apply to many countries. There are many embassies in Washington, D.C. that are under protective status. A third country comes in, many times it's Sweden or Switzerland or countries like this. and they protect the sanctity, the sovereignty of the building until whatever problem that the United States is having with the other country can be resolved. The United Nations needs to step forward. There needs to be unity. We can never allow the United States of America, which has a great number of embassies in Washington, D.C., to forcefully take over an embassy. The other day, they put out a so-called eviction notice with no signature, no seal, no statement of what department this came from. The municipal police, which have no authority in this matter, read out an eviction order saying some guy named Vecchio is telling us that we can't be in a building that we were invited into and have been living there for many months. We reject Vecchio. We reject his call to leave the building. We will stay there until a protective status has been made for the Venezuelan embassy and the police stand down. We have had multiple arrests. There have been very few arrests on the other side. We've had tens. We've had people brutalized, women, old, elderly. There was a 78-year-old man. I'm sure you all read the story of a woman that said that she was pregnant. I was there that night. We went around the corner. It was a 78-year-old man who was bringing toothbrushes to people that he loved. He was bringing them toothbrushes because they don't have toothbrushes. We can't get food into that building. We have people we love, people we've marched with, people that we've been with for years, people that we were in these buildings with for years. All we ask is that they have food until a resolution is taking place. We're not allowed to bring medicine. The elderly that were inside that building were asked to leave. Were forced to leave by our own people. Not forced, asked to leave. Because they were getting sicker and sicker. Because they didn't have their medicines. And this all because of Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State of the United States, and John Bolton. And somehow they have convinced, and there will be multiple lawsuits, I guarantee you, against the Secret Service of the United States of America, who have been acting as agents for the coup government of Guaido and this Vecchio guy. It is wrong. And now, not only that, I'm a taxpayer in the District of Columbia. My tax dollars are going to pay for municipal police because the secret police realized they have huge lawsuits on their hand. And not only that, is they brutalize people. They put people in hospital. They bloodied people. They're going to have multiple lawsuits after this. And they know that. And so they left the scene and left it to municipal police. Municipal police have nothing to do with a diplomatic mission in Washington, D.C. We've done this many times. We went to the military attaché office when that was also taken up by Mr. Vecchio, and the Secret Service was there. A woman in her 60s was hit, beaten by these radical Guaido people that come to the embassy. There's videotapes of all these things online. Anyone can access them. You go to Popular Resistance, you go to Code Pink, you go to Answer Coalition, and you will see all these videos. And not only that, they're out there. My lawyer for my case already has seen 10. She goes, there's no way they can do anything to you. I know that. But these are their tactics, to put the people that are organizing and trying to help stop a conflict in Venezuela. Civil war, intervention by the United States militarily in Venezuela is possible. And it will mean the death of many people. We're trying to stop that. And all it takes is sitting down at the table of great men like this, with great men in the United States, that can work out a reasonable situation where a third country can come in, take over the embassy, take control, just like there are many Cuba, Iran. I can name others, North Korea. There's many in Washington, D.C. that sit idle, and there are protectorate countries. We want that same status for Venezuela until an agreement can be worked out where Venezuela can rightfully retain sovereignty over their mission in Washington, D.C. One last statement. The group that this Mr. Vecchio and Mr. Guaido, if they took over the embassy, there's many of these radical Venezuelans screaming and yelling and hitting people in front of the embassy, holding up passports saying, I want to renew my passport. There is absolutely nothing diplomatically that Vecchio or Guaido or anybody else they send into that building can do. They can't issue passports. They can't issue visas. If somebody, God forbid, a Venezuelan dies in this country and they want the body removed, the Venezuelan embassy will be unable to help them because they have no representation in Caracas, where the capital of Venezuela is. So for them to say that they're on the right side is absolutely false. This is a coup and nothing but a coup. And we will maintain our presence in this building until the sovereignty of Venezuela is recognized.
James Bays from Al Jazeera. Thank you on behalf of the UN Correspondents Association for doing this. Can I ask the ambassador, there's some follow-up points from the gentleman from Code Pink that I'd like to put to the ambassador. Have you requested, I don't quite know how the Vienna Treaty works, have you requested a country to act as your protecting power in Washington under the treaty? Is there any recourse for you, any tribunal, any international court that you can go to? Would you consider taking this perhaps to the UN General Assembly to make a complaint? And if I can add one other point from what the gentleman said there, he referred to John Bolton. Clearly, the US is involved in a war of words with your country. There seem to be some similarities to perhaps the situation between the US and Iran. Do you see similarities?
Yes. Thank you very much for those questions. The first one, of course, we have tried over and over to talk to the U.S. authorities and to reach what the Vienna Convention establishes as the way forward to resolve this matter, which is assigning a protective power on both sides. And I absolutely know that the United States is appointing the Swiss government as the protective power in Caracas, and we are respecting that. But we also need that they accept our protecting power. We are proposing Turkey, for example. I don't know if that particular detail has been worked out, but so far the behavior and answer of the U.S. government is the following. They behave towards us as if there was the case of a severance of relations. And we are breaking relations, international relations. In those cases, they appoint a protective power. Fair enough. But when we ask exactly for the same reciprocity, they say, no, we don't recognize you. We recognize the other guy. So which is ridiculous. They pretend that we will behave as in a case of a severance of international relations in Caracas, but they will behave in Washington otherwise, which is ridiculous. Reciprocity is the one sacred principle of international relations. You do as you are done. My point is, there is a practice, this is a tradition of working this thing out, and this is our proposal. Let's appoint any government that you choose. If you don't want Turkey, let's go for another. But that's the actual and the historical way of solving it and fixing this matter. But as Taik said, you also said it. There was a crisis in Iran. And in Iran, there were locals taking over the American embassy. If the American embassy in Washington or the U.S. government in Washington allows people of their choosing to take over violently our headquarters, our premises, well, that will open the door for everyone around the world. They are putting at risk or at peril every single diplomat around the world, not just Venezuelans or Americans. That would be an accepted practice by everyone, that we choose the opposition side of any political situation in any government, all governments in the world have opposition. So you will choose your friends and send them over as a mob to take over the place. It's very dangerous. It's dangerous for all diplomats around the world. That's why we think that the United Nations is the right place to debate this issue. So where should we go? The General Assembly is one place. The International Court of Justice is another place. But we think that the sensible people, the reasonable people at the State Department, even in the Trump's government, should think twice. They are not just fighting Venezuela, and they are putting at risk their own people around the world. Everybody's seeing, watching what's going on.
Volviendo al punto que usted estaba mencionando.
Coming back to the point that you were making, can you tell us what's the proposal that you have made to the U.S. about Turkey being your custodian power, your protecting power? And would that be in contradiction to the U.S. saying that they have authorized Guaidó to take over Venezuelan facilities here in the U.S.? Today it was announced the cancellation of flights from the U.S. to Venezuela. Is there any reaction to use Russian flights, Chinese flights? And lastly, the international contact group was traveling today to Caracas to discuss with the government of President Maduro. How do you think that this will advance? In the last meeting of the Lima Group, it was discussed that they will both meet, the Lima Group and the International Contact Group, and that Cuba may be called to initiate a negotiation. Are you discussing that? Let's start with the latest one. The contact group is doing their things, and they're talking with many people. But what I can assure you is that the Lima Group does not work at all. We have no single hope to talk with a group that is basically supporting a coup d'etat in Venezuela. And even more, the latest communique, in its 14th point, the government in Colombia introduced in that text a very dangerous issue. They put those 10 countries to say that they are all convinced that ELN, which is a internal guerrilla group in Colombia, that has been there for over 60 years, and by the way, has made an attack in the border with Ecuador, in which, of course, we're not involved. They are saying that that's because of us, and that the ELN is an arm of the Venezuelan government. They have been saying so for the last 8 months. In September last year, Ambassador Carlos Trujillo, the ambassador of the U.S. to the OAS, said in a radio program that I cited at the OAS, he said that Maduro will leave because the military forces of Colombia will put him out due to a clash with the ELN, a military clash with the ELN. It was like a visionary and magic act predicting the future that a U.S. representative said. And now the Colombian government has a campaign for the last 2 weeks saying every 4 hours that there has been an incident and that everything that happens with the ELN is because of Venezuela. Now I do not know how will they explain the issue of the ELN for the last 6 years and the latest incident in Ecuador. That about the Lima Group. We cannot have any trust on them. About the flights, that's very serious. I just learned about that about 2 hours ago. It's part of the blockade. And let me tell you something. It's very dangerous because they're trying to kill the Venezuelan people by privation of international trade foods, depriving them from food. Do you know who's the first who will suffer from this? The Venezuelan people who is in South Florida, who will not be able to see their family. The thing is that the people who's taken these decisions, Mr. Bolton and Mr. Mauricio Claver, number 2 after Bolton for Latin America, and they're delighted to see how the Venezuelan people suffers. And they are lying to the U.S. people, creating a conflict. And the U.S. people is dead walking into war without seeing that these ludicrous people are taking measures never seen before. In the history of Venezuela, there's no memory of something as serious as this. We have no idea who's a sick criminal mind could have crafted something of this, but they are normalizing this conduct as if it was something traditional and customary that is carried regularly in the U.S. About the embassy, I said it in English, now I'll say it in Spanish. This will be settled. This has happened many times. This is not the first time in history. Countries break relations. Each countries have their facilities. Article 45 of the Vienna Convention says that even in cases of war, diplomatic premises must be protected and safeguarded by the host country. Even in cases of war, we are not in war and we do not want to be in war. My purpose here is to avoid a war. Part of their struggle is to avoid a war. We don't want a war with anyone. We have not had any war with anyone for the last 200 years. The U.S. in the last 200 years have only had 16 years without a war. Do you see the difference? 16 years without war in the last 200 years. And we, Venezuela, have had no war in the last 200 years. We do not war. That's ludicrous. It's crazy. But these people are crazy about power, and they want to take the entire Latin America. It's a continental trouble to a situation never seen before. Let's go to the agreement on protecting powers, which will not violate international law as they're currently doing as never before. They're putting at risk their very own diplomats if they all over the world if they do this against Venezuela. Because then all those crazy people who are in front of our embassy, then they will say that their own crazy people is able to do that. Just for the sake of Venezuelan oil, we could work without war and invasion as we have done in the last 100 years. Mr. Ambassador, could you comment on the words of Mr. Pence, who said at the Security Council that you shouldn't
comments about the president's comments in the Security Council? You shouldn't be here. Please go home.
Thank you. Let me answer in English then. The idea is that the Vice President, as Mr. Bolton also think, that as the United Nations are placed in New York, the United Nations belong to the United States, which is a massive mistake. The United Nations belongs to the world. So this is not the club of friends of the United States. We are not here because they like us. We are here for, exercising our rights, but more working to stop the aggression of the United States against our country. So this strange idea that they choose and pick who stays here because they think that this place belongs to us is absolutely mistaken. And it's full of, another example of the arrogance, hubris, also is said in English, arrogance, hubris, and I would say excess in their own thinking that they are so exceptional, they can break international law as they like. Even more, they can force other countries to break the international law, which is absolutely dangerous. It's not only ridiculous, it's dangerous. At the back, and then I will go.
Yes. Mr. Ambassador, this is Stefano Vaccara, Radio Radicale in Rome, La Voce di New York. And this is also a question about Washington. You have an embassy, and now you're saying the United States wants to break the rules. Who is helping you, and of course not in the administration, but in Congress? Do you have anyone, in this moment, the Maduro government has any relations, anyone that is in contact, that you can be in contact in Congress that is acting differently, that maybe has a different approach, and you think that you can, find the solution?
Listen, I'm not going to name friends in Congress, but I'm sure, knowing this country for a long time, that even in Congress, the division regarding Venezuela is not between Democrats and Republicans. My experience tells me that the division is between pro-war and pro-peace. And you can find pro-peace people in all places. And we want to work with pro-peace people. I know soldiers, former CIA agents, former veterans, I mean, people that lived all their lives working with wars and with violence, and they don't agree with what's going on now. And on the contrary, I know people who never had touched a weapon, and they are so eager to go and kill Venezuelans. Even the very same puppet they got there, he just signed a letter to send his representative here, the same Mr. Vecchio, to talk to the chief of the South Command in order to plan an invasion to Venezuela, which, by the way, was also discussed on a meeting on the 10th of April in one think tank, which is the propaganda organ of the superpowers, which is the Center for Strategic International Studies in Washington. 40 people met there on the 10th of April to discuss ways to wage war on Venezuela. And you know who was there? The ambassador of Colombia, the ambassador of Brazil, the head of the USAID, which supposedly is a humanitarian agency of the American government, of the US government. I mean, all these strange people, along with 10 Venezuelans, including Mr. Vecchio, were there planning to kill Venezuelans. And that's why we need to talk to all reasonable people, sensible people. Let's stop this madness.
Can I add something?
Yes, he wants to say something.
So, just so you know, yesterday in Santa Monica, California, Tulsi Gabbard spoke out and said, we need to have dialogue. We do need to have dialogue. There are individuals that we can have dialogue with. We just can't have dialogue with people who are throwing things at you, hitting you with sticks, tearing the hair out of your head. You need to have sensible people come to a sensible place and have diplomacy. I can't stress anymore. One of the things we talked about when we first went into the embassy there was what's going to happen to our embassies around the world? What's going to happen to American embassies? Because I travel around the world. I count on American embassies. What happens if any other country that has a problem with the United States can just shut it down and I no longer can use it? This is not okay. We have a State Department that's meant to do dialogue and diplomacy, not continue with war. And I'm going to stress again that we're on the right. We went in front of the OAS. The OAS, in its charter, is not allowed to kick Venezuela out. You just have to read it. It says if you're having conflict, if the OAS is having conflict with one state, it can't kick that state out. So and you talk about the Lima Group. Lima Group, why don't I organize my own Lima Group and decide who can stay and who can go? It's like it's a little like the Security Council in the United Nations, where just five different individuals decide everything for everybody else. This is not okay. We need to protect this embassy, and we will.
Mario Villar con la Agencia F. Maybe this is more Pink. Could you update us on the current situation at the embassy after what happened earlier this week? I understand there are still 4 people inside. And what are your plans to continue to defend the building?
So let me tell you the irony of the situation right here. You have these wild, crazy people who keep yelling at tourists walking down the streets and others and yelling at us. My people are dying of starvation. They have no water. They have no electricity. Guess what they cheered every single time? When the electricity went off. Yay! They cut off their electricity. Water. No water. Yay! No food. Yay! As a matter of fact, today we got 4 parcels of food inside because Jesse Jackson showed up. There was one guy who violently attacked these people. The Washington, D.C. Police Department stood by and watched. We were grateful that they stood by and watched him violently. It took 6 people to hold him back so that the food could be delivered. We were grateful that they didn't step in and arrest all of us for trying to deliver food to people. This is the irony. Today, there are at least 4 individuals inside the embassy there. They plan to be there even if they have no food or no water or no electricity. We are committed. Today, There was 100 people on our side of the street. We've been regulated to the other side of the street. And for some reason, these wild, it looks like football hooligans. They paint themselves all up and they attack you, and it's really like football hooliganism. They have tents and everything set up, and we will be there. We have plans. We've tried to protect the embassy, keep it clean. We have cleaning squads. We were cleaning everything, watering the plants, taking care of everything there. And these people are smashing windows, breaking down doors, throwing things inside. It's atrocious.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
Hi, Kevin Penner from Sankei Shimbun. Thank you for holding this press conference. I apologize if this question is a little bit long and I might butcher some of the names, but there's a report from 2 days ago that says Major General Manuel Ricardo Christopher Figueira and Cesar Omana, a Miami-based businessman, reportedly met with Michael Moreno, the president of Venezuela's Supreme Court, and that he was planning to issue a ruling to reinstate power to the National Assembly, of which he stripped power in 2017. And the report suggests that the ruling would call for free and fair elections and that Moreno wanted the Supreme Court and thereby himself as president to take power temporarily. Can you confirm that Moreno was considering this ruling, that the Venezuelan government knew about these meetings that he was holding, and what's your opinion on why the recent coup attempt failed?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. It's a fair question. You know why? Because that is how they blinker you all and throw dust at your eyes and put you to talk about things which are so far out. As the coup failed miserably, it was one of the clumsiest thing ever, but as dangerous as clumsiest as I said before. The only way they had to justify their massive failure is confounding everyone. This pure propaganda. I mean, now they are using psychological operations, and I can quote Mr. Bolton himself saying, perhaps in another context, but he believes in this kind of mantra, which is, quoting Mr. Churchill, he says that the truth has to be protected by a wall of lies. That is actually what he's doing. And Mr. Pompeo himself said in another meeting in Texas, I guess, in a university in Texas, that he learned at the CIA that we cheat, steal, and lie every single day. There are courses for it, he said. At the CIA, they are trained to do exactly that. Cheating, steal, and lie. I mean, this is the kind of people who throw that kind of trash at you and then pretend that we will begin to discuss every single detail. Come on. Sorry, I'm not going to go that low to discuss the psychological infotoxic operations of the American warmonger leaders at this moment in time.
But does the Venezuelan government deny that Moreno was considering this ruling? Were you aware that
Mr. Moreno is the head of the Supreme Court. How come can he be considering anything? But that's what he said. Mr. Bolton said exactly the same right at 9 in the morning of the 30th of April. I mean, the thing is that they were waiting for something, and as it didn't happen, the whole operation failed. They began to name and shame everyone just to create not just discomfort, fractions and divisions within the leadership of the country and the authorities of the country, not even the leadership. I mean, my point is, all these stories came afterwards as a way to explain the failure. And it's ridiculous for us to believe that actually happened.
You don't believe that meeting actually took place?
I don't believe that at all. I mean, how can I believe a man who, for his whole life, was the most radical, revolutionary, loyalist, and then the next day began to say, yes, Mr. Trump, please invade my country? It's ridiculous. Yes, please.
Embajador, buenas tardes.
Ambassador, good afternoon. We see also that the attack against Venezuela is not only against the embassy in D.C., but also here at the UN. What's your reaction about the close meeting of the Security Council yesterday on Venezuela? and about the meeting of the Lima Group with representatives from Guaidó in the last days to make pressure on African and Asian countries. The Lima Group is frustrated because the coup failed. They do not know what to do. The first thing was to call the South Command to invade the country. They were desperate, and the South Command, they do not know what to do with these people begging. I will read something that is very important for you to know. Article 128. I'll read it in English and Spanish. He'll go in English then. Do you see what I'm trying to say? It was a coup. It was a crime. It was something never seen before in Venezuela. Not the coup, but the fact that then they come to ask and beg for a foreign military intervention. We have never seen the conspiration with a foreign power for the invasion of Venezuela, of our country, for them to kill our family, my family, and everyone who's there in Venezuela. That's a crime against humanity. But then Colombians are also desperate, and the Lima Group as a whole, and are fabricating excuses, creating false flag operations. And then Mr. Eric Prince from Blackwater saying that he's proposing a 5,000 people army of assassin mercenaries with $40 million to invade Venezuela from Colombia. He proposed this at the White House. Do you see the psychopath who are leading this country? Then it's these kind of people who come to the Security Council and say that they're very concerned about the situation in Venezuela. It is very dangerous what's going on, because they're desperate, because they have failed. Their coup failed. It's a criminal coup that is sanctioned by our laws. This is a law that has been enacted for over 50 years. It's not a new law. So where are we going now? There cannot be any more impunity. Simon Bolivar said, our liberator during the independence war, he said that for every rebellion, there was one pardon, and for one pardon, another rebellion. And then that was the cause of the evils of the Republic. And then for every crime and every coup, there's a pardon. And then for each pardon, there's a new coup. That's why they are all running to the embassies asking for a pardon so they can plan for the new coup, as they are doing since 2002. For over 17 years, they have been doing this. So it is time for justice to come. This is where we're going.
Ambassador. Mr. Berry, what is the plan if the police enters the embassy and tries to arrest the people that is inside?
Well, we shouldn't really talk about our plans. I will tell you that there is a plan. I think the plan will be a peaceful plan. We intend not to have anyone injured or hurt. I'm sure that, there's many techniques you can use, lockdowns, you can use arm in arm. There's all kinds of things that we've done in the past to stop things like the Iraq War. How did that work out for you? Or Libya, we protested that one. We were in the Libyan Embassy, as a matter of fact. How did that work out? We're trying to stop those kinds of actions. I don't want the people of Venezuela to suffer because some reactionary group, it seems to be very small, is trying to impose its will. Mm-hmm. And that there's an American minority inside the White House. And I'll admit, we're not a very super educated people. We don't know. We're 350 million people. They don't understand But we seriously understand. I've been to Yemen. I was in Tahrir Square. I saw democracy up close. And then I saw what happens when it's stolen from them. And 650 people were murdered in one day in Rabaa Square in Cairo. I've seen, I can tell you that this is a bad plan that the United States government, if it has a plan at all, and its plan is to sow discord. And we shouldn't make children and women and elderly in Venezuela suffer. Sanctions are a weapon. Mm-hmm. They are the most egregious weapon. They destroy, they kill, they murder, just as a tank does or a bomb. And we need to stop these sanctions now. Come to the table. I'll tell you another fact. Do you know that by population, by percentage of population, Nicolas Maduro won more votes than Donald Trump did? Now, go to Venezuela and try to explain to a Venezuelan the Electoral College. They would say that's the screwiest system they've ever heard. They would say you're ripping off the people. You're stealing the election. From all outside, it looks like if Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party, boycotted the election, and then suddenly Hillary Clinton said, I'm the new president, what would happen in the United States? You know and I know, civil war, craziness.
Y una pregunta para el embajador, perdón. ¿Usted cree que
And now a question for the ambassador. Do you think that a solution to the Venezuelan situation could be reached to the international contact group, or how do you think this will be settled? We think that dialogue is permanent and never could it end. But dialogue must be amongst Venezuelans. Regrettably, a sector of the Venezuelans have a foreign chief, a foreign head. But that sector that says that they no longer want dialogue but war, other leaders from other countries have told them that if they have failed once, let it fail 10, 20 times, but never could we stop talking with our fellow compatriots. If it's through the contact group, through whatever group there is, I am not going to marry with only one group because I know there are multiple initiatives going on at the same time. But dialogue and negotiation is the only way to settle this in peace. We do not want to exterminate the opposition. We have been in this for 20 years, resisting. By the way, yesterday, you should read a publication from the Defense Department of the U.S. on how to, it's a research about 300 pages on how to support resistance in countries in which they want to destabilize. We are a perfect case because for 20 years they have been supporting these sort of groups in Venezuela. But at the end, this has to be sorted out by Venezuela. What will never, ever happen is for foreign militaries to come to Venezuela to settle what only us can settle. Can you tell us again the question of Turkey about the protecting country? Could you explain it again? Yes. Article 45 of the Vienna Convention establishes that in case of breaking relations, the way that diplomatic facilities are to be protected because they still have immunity and cannot be broken by the host country, they must be protected even in case of war. So how is that done? Each country appoints a custodian or protecting power. In our case, the U.S. government has already appointed someone. They want Switzerland to be the protecting power of their facilities, their former embassy in Caracas. And we are okay, that's an option. But for that to be effective, there should be reciprocity. And as done in every other country in the world, in Washington, they have to accept the protecting power for the Venezuelan facilities in Washington. But the government of the United States thus far says no. And we do not understand because they want us to fulfill international law, but they are not fulfilling it on their end. So we have a proposal, which is Turkey. It could be any other country. But the thing is, we're exploring options. And the other side denies any possibility. And at the same time, they do this game at the embassy. What is going on at the embassy, it's a micro case of what's going on in Venezuela. It's a coup d'etat in action in which they want to forbid those inside the embassy from electricity, water, food, where they shame them and throw rocks at them. They want to exercise a blockade, still war. It's the same as in Venezuela. Racist language, it's exactly the same. It is a nightmare. Racist and supremacist nightmare as never seen before. And we will not carry on with this. The established diplomatic procedures should prevail, but they want to break them.
In 2 months, the United States, in all its court systems and all its judiciaries and lawyers and state departments and all that, has not come up with one law that allows them to take us out of there. Think about this. They've had hundreds of police, different police organizations focused on this building, and they can't get us out. Yesterday, they walked even inside, and they still couldn't get us out. They put out a fake eviction order. They still can't get us out. That tells you it's because it's illegal.
Más todavía, ellos
even more. They say the propaganda says that over 50 countries recognize us right now, but we are the government recognized by the UN, where there are 193 governments, which is the only legitimate government agreed by the international community. All the things are a lie. If they were to take the embassy, as the gentleman said, they are not able to issue any document. They have no authority. They don't even control a single police car. Don't you see what happened on 30 April with the coup? They called for military violence, and now nothing happened, and now they are hiding in embassies. Is that a serious government? A government that is hidden in embassies? A government that asks for violence against its own people? It's a pathetic thing. They cannot have any sort of success at the UN or on the basis of international law. One last question.
I actually have two questions. Jeffrey Sachs, who is very much respected by the establishment, has presented a report documenting that the economic problems and crisis in Venezuela are the consequence of the U.S. sanctions. Nobody talks about the report. Very few people know about it. Yet Jeffrey Sachs is universally recognized at the United Nations. He's enormously influential. Why is this report being ignored or buried? And as a follow-up question, I was quite astounded when so publicly Mr. Guaido asked for the United States to intervene in his country militarily. I would like to know if there is any... it's quite astounding. Is this a massive... I mean, to ask another country to invade your country seems to me to be very strange, and yet he's doing it, and it's being permitted, and nobody's talking about it.
Thank you for the question. First, I don't remember any instance in Venezuelan history where one leader asked for a foreign power to invade and fight their own compatriots. I mean, there is no instance, there is no example. This is extraordinary that one person that self-proclaimed as the president of the whole Venezuelan people is asking a foreign army to come into our territory and kill Venezuelans. This is treason, as simple as that. And an international crime and a crime against humanity. And the problem is that the media is trying to normalize. And the Senator Marco Rubio told the media off after the 30th of April, saying, don't call it a coup. It's not a coup. It's a liberation process, Operación Libertad. It's a liberty of freedom operation. Don't call it a coup. Washington Post, again, call the whole American media to, don't call it a coup, please. Call it an uprising. Everybody is trying to gaslight, is the actual word here. Gaslight in front of your eyes. You could see a coup and they are telling you, like mesmerizing, no, it's not a coup, don't believe it, it's not a coup. They are freedom fighters, like the Contras in Nicaragua. It's ridiculous. I mean, my point is, we have criminals at the helm here, and criminals in a coup there. And they are complicitly working together. And as far as the blockade, it's another point. Sanctions kill. Sanctions are criminal. We are launching a campaign called Unblock Venezuela, Desbloquea Venezuela. And we are trying to inform the whole world which are the actual effects, which, by the way, there is a group here that also works with the people in Washington, with the violent, hatred groups, that they are pretending to deny the effects of sanctions. They are going all over the place, TV stations and big media, corporate media, and saying, no, American sanctions are nothing. It's the whole clumsiness and mistakes and corruption of Mr. Maduro. Well, if we are so clumsy and incapable of working our own economy, why do they need sanctions for? They need sanctions because they need to deprive. They are waging a siege war. It's a kind of medieval war. They are depriving, they are starving our people. And they are pretending not to, but they have their intellectuals, scientific, they say the very same, I'm going to name it, the very same economists, very prestigious economists here, Venezuelan American economist, called Ricardo Hausman. He was working at Harvard until a few weeks ago, and he is now the representative of Mr. Guaido at the Inter-American Development Bank. He is the same person who was calling for an invasion 3 years ago. He was the genius who came up with the idea of a military invasion to solve the problem in Venezuela. And he's the very same person who says that sanctions has no effect whatsoever on Venezuela right now. But it's the very same person that in 2004 said that Chavez didn't win the elections, that the opposition won, and he had the proof. We're still waiting for those proofs. We're still waiting after 15 years. The last one, yes.
Ambassador, we know that Russia and China have offered humanitarian aid. Some aircrafts arrived from China. What's the process ahead? Because during the meeting of Pompeo and Lavrov, they said that on Venezuela they have different positions, but they were looking at convergence on humanitarian assistance. How does the government of President Maduro looking at this? The last thing, you said that there are various options, but what's the one who reaches a compromise first? I cannot predict a horse race at the very beginning. To believe Mr. Pompeo, that will be very ingenious. You cannot believe anything to that man. You have seen it here at the council 1 or 2 times. It is a Cold War era attitude of the U.S. government now. The problem is in Venezuela, but they say that they want to settle that with Russia, and they discuss that in front of me. They say that, yes, we know that they owe you money, but you will lose it because in the Cold War era, you lose and we won. According to Mr. Bolton, Mr. Pompeo, we're a colony of Russia that they are coming to liberate with their forces. That's one of the biggest mistakes in understanding the question. He does not know Venezuela. He does not know what he's saying. But he's saying that he will go to Moscow to reach a solution to the Venezuelan question. The questions and troubles of Venezuela will be settled in Venezuela by Venezuelans. It will be us deciding. But this furious guy thinks that he will settle it in Russia because he thinks that Russia is our boss, as he is the boss of Mr. Guaido. But he's ludicrous. But we are patriots. We're proud to be Venezuelans. We're not crying for a visa. We want the independence of Venezuela, and they do not understand that. When will they understand that? I hope that will be soon. About humanitarian aid, with whom respect the principles of independence, neutrality, consent, humanity. those who do not respect those principles will not ever be in Venezuela. We're working with the UN. Thank you very much.